Last season, Jhoan Duran of the Minnesota Twins made history. With one out in the ninth, Duran tossed this fastball to Eugenio Suarez, measured at 104.8 miles per hour. Setting aside that Suarez was somehow able to make contact, grounding out to shortstop Carlos Correa, this pitch was the fastest in Major League Baseball last season. It rounded out a top 10 leaderboard made up of flamethrowers like Duran, 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 Alex Reyes, Duran, Duran, and Duran. Duran and Reyes aren't the only ones turning up the heat though. The average fastball velocity in 2023 was 94.1 miles per hour. This was up from the year before that, which was up from the year before that, and so on and so forth all the way back to 2007, when StatCast first started measuring pitches. And it's not just pitchers who are throwing harder. Elly De La Cruz of the Reds unleashed this 99.8 mile-an-hour laser to Luke Maile, nailing Wilmer Flores at the plate. This throw set the StatCast record for fastest tracked infield assist, made more impressive by the fact that De La Cruz accomplished it in just his 37th career game. Players as a whole are throwing harder than ever, but at what cost? With this rise in velocity has come a similar spike in arm injuries, with more and more top pitchers undergoing major operations like Tommy John surgery. Soon, players at all levels, from the major leagues to youth baseball, will have to ask themselves, just how much are these extra miles an hour worth? Stephen Strasburg was a once-in-a-lifetime talent. This was according to an anonymous MLB scout in March 2009, after the then 20-year-old lit up San Diego State radar guns with a 102-mile-an-hour fastball. Strasburg's legend had been building for a while. He was the only amateur on Team USA at the '08 Olympics. He'd been compared to all-time greats, like Justin Verlander and Roger Clemens. And he once struck out 23 batters in a single college game. Because of this, Strasburg was the consensus #1 pick entering the 2009 draft. ESPN called him the most hyped pick in draft history. Sports Illustrated called him the most closely watched pitching prospect in the history of baseball. The Washington Nationals, in the midst of their second straight 100-loss season, selected him first overall. Stephen Strasburg made his MLB debut on June 8, 2010. Nationals Park, which ranked 23rd in attendance that year, was sold out with a listed crowd of 40,315. Fans from across the country had descended on DC to witness the player literally nicknamed Jesus. Strasburg delivered them 7 innings versus the Pittsburgh Pirates, striking out 14. That included 7 straight Ks to end the night, capping off the most dominant debut performance in MLB history. The impact of Stephen Strasburg's arrival on baseball can't be overstated. People crossed state lines to watch him pitch. Networks rearranged their schedules to broadcast his games. When he made his second career start in Cleveland, attendance at Progressive Field was the highest since opening day by far. His fastball was unlike anything anybody had seen before. Sure, there were pitchers who could break 100, but there was nobody who could do it with as much regularity and ease as Strasburg. He was the pitcher of the century for the Nationals, and a dream come true for their long-suffering fans. It wouldn't take long, however, for that dream to become a nightmare. It happened that summer. By mid-August, Stephen Strasburg had made 11 major league starts. In that time, he had blown away the competition, striking out 1 out of every 3 batters he faced. Then, on August 21st in Philadelphia, something snapped.
Let's take a look at the last pitch again, Rob. Elbow.
While he was originally diagnosed with forearm tightness, an MRI later that week confirmed Strasburg's worst fears. He had significantly torn his UCL and needed Tommy John surgery. A fairy tale rookie season, cut short at just 68 innings. Beyond that, though, lied even more uncertainty. From 2010 through 2012, Stephen Strasburg went 1 year, 1 month, and 16 days without throwing a major league pitch. In that time, the righty made some impressive progress. He approached his rehab with the same focus and drive that had got him to the show in the first place. When he returned to action in September 2011, he made 5 starts to the tune of a 1.5 ERA. Still, the Nationals were worried. Worried that Strasburg was returning too soon. Worried that he might get hurt again. Worried that they might lose their once-in-a-lifetime prospect forever. Washington held the pitcher to a strict innings limit in 2012, shutting him down in early September. It was a controversial move, considering the Nationals were in the midst of their first playoff race since, well, ever. But the hope was that in limiting Strasburg's use, they'd be able to prevent wear and tear on his joints, like a sports car. This practice had actually been established in 2009, when Nats pitcher Jordan Zimmermann underwent Tommy John himself. After missing most of 2010, Zimmerman was limited to just 160 innings in 2011. This was the process GM Mike Rizzo followed with Strasburg, although his doctor insisted that he hadn't recommended such a shutdown. Despite winning 98 games in the regular season, the Nationals lost to the Cardinals in the 2012 NLDS. Stephen Strasburg spent the series on the sidelines, having been left off the playoff roster. The shutdown, however, did seem to work. Initially, Strasburg finished 2013 with 183 innings pitched, striking out 191 and posting an earned run average of 3 flat. 2014 was even better. He tied Johnny Cueto for the NL strikeout title and posted career bests in starts and innings. He won 14 games for the first-place Nats and finished 9th in the Cy Young vote. By 2015, though, the cracks were beginning to show. It started with an ankle injury in spring training. This setback, while minor, caused Strasburg to alter his mechanics, resulting in back and neck soreness for most of the first half. He then strained his oblique in July, although he did finish strong over the last 2 months of the season. This would become an unfortunate pattern for the pitcher over the next few years. Flashes of brilliance throughout the season, interrupted by major IL stints that cut into his playing time. From 2015 through 2018, Strasburg is listed as missing games for the following reasons: a neck injury, an oblique strain, a back injury, the flu, another back strain, an elbow injury, another elbow injury, a shoulder injury, and a cervical nerve impingement. Remarkably, he still managed 24 starts per season during this time, posting an outstanding ERA+ of 130. 2019 was the high point for both the Nationals and Strasburg. He led the league in innings pitched and wins, and set a career high in strikeouts. He also made 33 starts, his most since 2014. Washington took home their first title in franchise history, beating Houston in 7 games. Strasburg was brilliant, going a perfect 5-0 in the postseason. The day after the series ended, Stephen Strasburg opted out of his contract, eventually signing a 7-year deal with the Nationals worth $245 million. It was the most money ever committed to a pitcher. As it turned out though, 2019 wouldn't just be Strasburg's last good year, it would be his last full season, period. He went down in 2020 with nerve damage, cutting an already shortened season even shorter. He lost most of 2021 to thoracic outlet syndrome and made just 1 start in 2022 before a stress reaction in his ribs shut him down for the year. Which brings us to last season. In June of 2023, Strasburg hit the IL with severe nerve damage, leading many to doubt whether he'd ever pitch again. The news was made official in August. Unable to take part in any further rehab, Stephen Strasburg was retiring at 34. Strasburg's career wasn't ended by Tommy John surgery, per se. But in the context of his other injuries, it's hard not to wonder how differently things could have gone had it not happened so early on. See, there was a time not that long ago when an injury like Strasburg had in 2010 would have ended his career then and there. Before the 1970s, the primary treatment for a pitcher with a torn UCL was to, medically speaking, deal with it. All-time greats like Sandy Koufax lost their prime years to injury, forced into retirement by a mysterious condition known as dead arm. That all changed in 1974, when Dr. Frank Jobe performed the first ever UCL reconstruction on Dodgers pitcher Tommy John. Using a tendon from John's right forearm to replace the injured ligament, Jobe set the odds of success at roughly 1 in 100. The recovery was long and grueling, but by April of 1976, Tommy John was back on the mound for the Dodgers. He made 31 starts that season, earning the Sporting News Comeback Player of the Year award. Not only had Tommy John made a complete recovery, but he played more seasons after the surgery than he had before. John was in the league until he was 46, retiring tied for the 3rd longest career in MLB history. If there was ever a case for Tommy John surgery's success, look no further than the man it was named after. From 1974 to 1994, a span of 20 years, there were 12 players who got the operation. From 1995 to 1999, a span of 5 years, there were 22 Tommy John surgeries performed on MLB players. In the 12 years after that, that number rose to 194, with another 275 being performed on minor leaguers. A lot of these are guys who underwent the surgery, recovered, and returned to full form soon afterwards. But that hasn't been the case for everyone. We want to think Tommy John surgery has a perfect success rate, but it doesn't. A study of MLB players from 2007 to 2014 found 170 documented UCL injuries during that time. Of those injuries, 16, or nearly 10%, were re-tears. The study also found that pitchers who tore their UCL had higher velocity, on average, than pitchers who did not. According to the Cleveland Clinic's website, only 80 to 83% of pro ball players return to the same level of performance after having Tommy John surgery. For high school players, it's even less, around 70 to 73%. Looking at the big picture though, there are things worse than not being able to play baseball. A lot of things. Sang-Ho Baek had two dreams as a child. The first was to pitch in the major leagues. When Sang was just 13 years old, his parents told him they were moving from South Korea to the United States. Sang had just one question for them: can I keep playing baseball there? Compared to the first, Sang's other dream was straightforward. After becoming a Major League Baseball player, Sang-Ho Baek fantasized of one day being able to buy his parents a house. Sang's family moved to Salisbury, Maryland, about 2 hours outside of DC. His father's original plan had been to work at a poultry factory for a year before moving the family out to California. A lot can change in a year though, and by 2014, the family had found a community in Salisbury. They decided to stay. Fast forward 6 years. Now 20 years old, Sang-Ho Baek was playing on a scholarship for George Mason University in Virginia. Although most players don't see any action until their sophomore year, the freshman made 7 appearances out of the bullpen. At this point, however, the pain had begun. It actually began the previous fall, a dull ache in his right elbow that just wouldn't seem to go away. In the meantime, his spirits remained high. His infectious energy endeared him to his teammates, while on the mound, his slow, eephus-style curve complemented a low 90s fastball. Still, the pain persisted. By May of his freshman year, Sang returned to the doctors. This time, they agreed. The 20-year-old needed Tommy John surgery. Sang was nervous at first, but he turned that anxiety into a plan. He'd get the surgery, staying in shape until he could start throwing. When his arm was strong enough, he'd take private pitching lessons for the first time. With a new, healthy elbow, Sang told his family, he wouldn't just be as good as he was before, he'd be even better. Maybe he was encouraged by Hyunjin Ryu, his favorite pitcher growing up. Ryu had undergone Tommy John in his high school days, only to become one of the best pitchers in the KBO, then one of the best pitchers in MLB. There's also the idea that Tommy John surgery might help him throw even harder, a rumor that's gathered traction in certain circles over the last decade. Sang-Ho Baek has the operation on June 8, 2021. In the days that follow, Sang's arm feels surprisingly fine. His leg, though, is a different story. See, Tommy John surgery uses a tendon from one part of the body, like the leg, for example, to replace the damaged ligament in the elbow. This is what Stephen Strasburg's surgeon did in 2010, and it's what Sang-Ho Baek's surgeon, Dr. Wimi Dawogi, has done now. When Sang asks Dawogi about the pain, the doc assures him that leg soreness is typical. Sang's little sister Sunny keeps him company at home as he recovers. They spend the days following the surgery, watching movies, visiting the beach, and making plans for the summer. On June 11th, at 10 o'clock p.m., Sang heads to bed. 11 hours later, at Peninsula Regional Medical Center, Sang-Ho Baek is pronounced dead. The cause of death is listed as a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot resulting as a complication from the surgery. To date, Sang-Ho Baek is the first and only person to die following Tommy John surgery. His passing wasn't just an untimely tragedy, however. It was a warning to anybody who would listen. It's impossible to predict, with any accuracy, whether a pitcher will get hurt or stay healthy. Online experts, which is an oxymoron, I know, will tell you that they can. But if it were that easy, then MLB teams would actually be doing it, rather than giving out record-breaking contracts to players who would never see the end of them. I'm looking at you, Anthony Rendon. The one thing we are sure is contributing to these arm injuries, however, is velocity. See, if a person wants to keep their arm healthy, throwing a baseball is probably the worst thing they could do. And the harder someone throws, the more stress they put on their arm. Multiply that by thousands of pitches over a lifetime, and the chances of injury skyrocket. It's no coincidence, then, that as the game continues to emphasize velocity, players are also hitting the IL at record-breaking rates. The spike in surgery isn't helped by rampant misinformation, like the belief that Tommy John will help pitchers throw faster upon return. Doctors have reported kids as young as 10 being brought in by their parents in the hopes of, quote, getting it out of the way. Influenced by coaches, parents, and a recruitment system that prioritizes power above all else, pitchers as young as middle school are going under the knife. The result is a culture that normalizes surgery as just another part of the game, concealing the very real danger it poses to players. There's another wrinkle to this epidemic, which is that Tommy John doesn't seem to get you as far as it used to. Back in the day, a pitcher with Tommy John could expect another solid 10 years or so before their arm wore out again. Pretty soon, that number was down to 5. Now, pitchers with a surgically reconstructed UCL are lucky to get more than 3 good years out of it. This could be a problem for someone like Shohei Ohtani, who just underwent the second major arm surgery of his career last September. Baseball players are younger than ever, throwing harder than ever, and risking more than ever, for less of a reward. There's only so long before they decide that the risk just isn't worth it, and start doing something else. It's not like we haven't seen baseball players excel at other sports before. So, what happens then? MLB, for one, probably doesn't want to find out. Unfortunately, until the baseball world, from the major leagues to youth ball, decides to make a change, nothing will happen. We'll keep seeing careers cut short, lives ruined, or even worse. There's a lot of reporting being done on this subject, and there's a list of sources I used for this video in the description below. I encourage you to check it out. I also encourage you to check out this video by my friend And That's Baseball about one of the rarest arm injuries in baseball history. It's a good one, trust me. Thank you for watching. Remember to leave a like, comment, and maybe even subscribe. I'll see you next time.